First saw these reports that the president is attempting to get the Justice Department to pay him $230 million. What was your first reaction?
Well, if he had gone through with the proceedings and was acquitted, then maybe he would have some, legal standing or a right to seek this. But as you know, he came into office, has declared himself and has a Supreme Court ruling that backs him up in many ways, that he can do almost anything.
And might I add, everybody should tune in on the Tuesday night for that election day, because we will be on the ground in every one of those places. Congressman Swalwell, stand by for 1 second, because I want to bring in Skye Perryman, the president and CEO of Democracy Forward. We've been talking a lot about Skye, what Democracy Forward is trying to find out. Walk us through it.
Well, the American people don't owe Donald Trump $230 million. This is just completely unethical and is another, part of his agenda to try to normalize things that are not normal and that are not lawful and that are not ethical in America. And so we have filed a demand request through the Freedom of Information Act. We will see if the Department of Justice and the other agencies that we've requested information from respond. And if they don't, we're going to go to court.
All right. So here's what nobody's talking about right now. And honestly, this is the kind of story that should be plastered across every single news outlet in America. But of course, it's getting buried under all the other chaos. November 4th, 2025. That's the date you need to remember, because that's when prosecutors in New York walked into a courtroom and dropped what might be the biggest bombshell in Trump's entire legal saga. And yeah, I know you're probably thinking another Trump legal story. What else is new? But trust me, this one's different. They presented a ledger, not just any ledger, a hidden ledger. One that allegedly, and I mean allegedly, with the biggest air quotes you can imagine, details secret payments and bribes made by Donald Trump and his inner circle. We're talking about payments disguised as legitimate business expenses, payments to foreign entities, payments that were supposedly hidden from investigators for years. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Are on the front lines in the courts and in the public square, pushing these issues and forcing transparency.
Skye Perryman, thank you so much for being here. So helpful to hear from you. Congressman Swalwell, before you go, I do have one more question. What's your level of confidence right now that this $230 as the East Wing of the White House is being torn down, the $230 million transfer of money to Trump will actually not happen?
Oh, I think he has every intention of doing it. We have to take him at his word, because he has been as awful or worse than, what he promised on the campaign trail. So we have to be ready.
The Netflix series, except this is real life. Now let me paint the picture for you. This is happening in the middle of a civil fraud trial. Trump's already under intense scrutiny. His business practices are being dissected line by line. His credibility, let's just say it's not doing so hot. And then boom, prosecutors pull out this ledger like they're revealing the final piece of a jigsaw puzzle. And here's what makes this absolutely wild. The ledger reportedly has handwritten notes from who? Alan Weisselberg, Trump's former CFO, the guy who knows where all the bodies are buried, financially speaking. These notes reference wire transfers, over $420,000 described as grossed up to cover taxes on hush money payments. Yeah, you heard that right. Grossed up. That's accounting speak for inflating payments to cover the tax burden so the recipient gets the full amount. It's not illegal on its own, but when you're doing it to hide hush money, that's when things get real sketchy real fast. Judge Arthur Engeron, the guy presiding over this whole circus, he's not holding back. He called the fraud shock the conscience. Those are strong words from a judge. He's basically saying this stuff is so egregious, so beyond the pale, that it offends basic principles of justice. And then he went after Trump personally, said his credibility is severely compromised. Can you believe this? We're talking about a sitting president, the guy who won in 2024, the guy who's supposed to be leading the country right now. And a judge is publicly questioning his credibility in a fraud case. Trump's legal team, they're in full defense mode. They're calling the ledger fabricated. They're screaming about political motivation. They're saying this is all a witch hunt designed to take down Trump. And honestly, that's been their playbook for years. Deny everything, attack the prosecutors, claim it's all politics. But here's the thing. The judge, he's not buying it. When Trump's lawyers asked him to dismiss the evidence, to throw out this ledger, Judge Engeron said, and I quote, "There is no way I am going to grant that. No way." That's how confident he is that this evidence is legit. So now we've got this situation where a hidden bribery ledger is sitting in a courtroom, authenticated and accepted as evidence, detailing potentially illegal payments made by the president and his associates. And it's all happening while Trump is sitting in the Oval Office. The timing here, it's insane. We're heading into the 2026 election cycle. Midterms are coming. Trump's political opponents are going to use this. His supporters are going to defend him. And the rest of America is just sitting here watching this legal soap opera unfold in real time. This isn't just about one ledger. This isn't just about one fraud case. This is about presidential accountability. This is about whether someone at the highest level of power can be held responsible for alleged misconduct. This is about the integrity of our entire system. And yeah, I know you might be thinking, but didn't Trump already survive all these legal battles? Didn't he get elected anyway? Sure, but this is different because this ledger, if it's real, if it holds up in court, it's direct documentary evidence. It's not testimony that can be disputed. It's not he said, she said. It's literally written records of alleged crimes. The mainstream media, they're barely touching this. You know why? Because they've covered so many Trump scandals that they're exhausted. They don't know how to make people care anymore. Every week there's a new revelation. Every month there's a new indictment. And people have become numb to it. But this deserves attention. This deserves outrage. Because if we let this slide, if we just shrug our shoulders and say, well, that's just Trump being Trump, then we're saying it's okay for presidents to allegedly commit fraud. We're saying powerful people don't have to follow the same rules as everyone else. So buckle up, because what I'm about to walk you through is going to show you exactly why this matters, why this could change everything, and why nobody in the media is giving this the attention it deserves. We're going deep on this one. Okay, so let's rewind a bit. Because to understand why this ledger is such a massive deal, you need to understand the context. You need to understand the web of legal cases that Trump's been tangled up in for years. And trust me, it's a tangled web. First, let's talk about the civil fraud case itself. This is the case where Judge Engelron already fined Trump $354 million. Yeah, you heard that right. $354 million. That fine came down back in February 2024. The judge found that Trump and his organization systematically inflated the value of assets to get better loans and insurance deals. We're talking about properties being valued at double or triple their actual worth. Mar-a-Lago, Trump's beloved Florida estate, was valued at something ridiculous like $500 million when its actual assessed value was way lower. This wasn't a small mistake. This was years of deliberately misleading banks and insurers. And here's what's crazy. Trump, even after being fined hundreds of millions, showed zero remorse. The judge noted that in his ruling, he said Trump's lack of remorse was stunning, that he seemed to think he did nothing wrong, that he'd probably do it all again if given the chance. So that's the backdrop. Trump's already been found liable for massive fraud. He's already facing a judgment that could cripple his business empire. And then prosecutors come in with this ledger, this new piece of evidence that allegedly shows even more financial misconduct. Now, let's talk about what's actually in this ledger. According to prosecutors, and again, this is all alleged, the ledger shows payments to foreign entities. We don't know which countries yet. We don't know who specifically received the money, but the fact that it's foreign entities, that raises all kinds of red flags. Why? Because under federal law, there are strict rules about payments to foreign governments or officials. The Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, the FCPA, makes it illegal for American citizens or companies to bribe foreign officials to get business advantages. If Trump or his organization was making payments to foreign entities and disguising them as business expenses, that could violate federal law. And then there's the hush money angle. Remember, Trump was already convicted in a separate criminal case for hush money payments to Stormy Daniels. That case, which wrapped up in May 2024, resulted in Trump becoming the first former president ever convicted of a felony, 34 counts of falsifying business records. The prosecution in that case showed how Trump and his team, specifically Michael Cohen, paid Stormy Daniels $130,000 to keep quiet about an alleged affair before the 2016 election. Then they disguised those payments as legal fees. They falsified records to hide what the money was really for. And here's where it gets interesting. The ledger that prosecutors just revealed, it references those same kinds of payments. Wire transfers that were grossed up to cover taxes. That's exactly what happened with the Stormy Daniels payment. Cohen was reimbursed way more than $130,000 because they had to cover his tax burden. So prosecutors are essentially saying, look, this wasn't just one isolated incident. This was a pattern. Trump and his organization routinely made secret payments, disguised them as something else, and covered their tracks. And they did it over and over again. Alan Weisselberg, the CFO whose handwriting is supposedly all over this ledger, He's already served time in jail for tax fraud related to Trump Organization schemes. He was sentenced in 2022. Then he violated his probation and got sentenced again in 2024. This guy knows the inner workings of Trump's finances better than almost anyone. And if his handwritten notes are in this ledger, that's powerful evidence. Because Weisselberg wasn't some low-level employee. He was the chief financial officer. He reported directly to Trump. He was in the room for major financial decisions. His notes carry weight. Trump's lawyers, they're attacking this on every front. They're saying the ledger is fake. They're saying it was planted. They're saying prosecutors are manufacturing evidence because they hate Trump and want to destroy him politically. And look, Trump's base is going to believe that. His supporters have been conditioned for years to distrust anything negative about him. But here's the problem with that defense. The judge, a guy who's been on the bench for years, who's seen thousands of pieces of evidence, he's saying this looks legit. He's refusing to throw it out. He's letting it into evidence. That's a big deal. And it's not just this one judge. Trump's been losing in court after court. Yeah, he got a win in August 2025 when an appeals court threw out $500 million in penalties from another case. But that was more about legal technicalities than about him being innocent. The appeals court said the penalties were too high, not that Trump didn't commit fraud. So let's talk about what this means for Trump right now. He's the sitting president. He won in 2024. He's back in the White House. And normally there's this idea that a sitting president can't be prosecuted for criminal charges while in office. It's not a law. It's more like a Department of Justice policy, but it's held up for decades. Civil cases, though, those can proceed. That's why this fraud trial is happening while Trump is president. The judge isn't backing down. The prosecutors aren't backing down. They're pushing forward. And think about the implications here. If this ledger holds up, if it proves that Trump made illegal payments or bribes, that could lead to more investigations. Congress could get involved. The Justice Department might look into criminal charges once Trump's out of office. State prosecutors in New York might pile on more charges. Trump's already juggling multiple legal battles. There's the classified documents case, which got dismissed but could be reopened. There's the Georgia election interference case, which is moving slowly but still active. There's multiple civil lawsuits from people claiming Trump defamed them or defrauded them. And now there's this ledger. The man is fighting legal battles on like 6 different fronts, and each one threatens his legacy, his freedom, and his fortune. But here's what really gets me. The economy angle. Trump ran in 2024, promising to fix the economy, to bring back jobs, to make America wealthy again. And yet his own business dealings are under investigation for fraud. His own financial records are being exposed as potentially criminal. How can you trust someone to manage a $25 trillion economy when they allegedly can't even run their own businesses without breaking the law? That's the question voters should be asking. That's the question the media should be hammering home. And then there's the broader issue of presidential accountability. If Trump can commit fraud, make illegal payments, hide bribes and ledgers, and face no real consequences because he's president, what does that say about our system? What does that say about the rule of law? The founders, when they set up this country, they were terrified of a king. They were terrified of someone with absolute power who couldn't be held accountable. That's why they created checks and balances. That's why they built in ways to remove a president who breaks the law. But right now, those checks and balances feel broken. Trump's been impeached twice. He's been indicted multiple times. He's been found liable for fraud and sexual abuse in civil courts. And yet, he's still president. He still has power. He still has millions of supporters who don't care about any of this. So what happens next? That's the big question. Because this ledger is not going away. The trial continues. More evidence will come out. More testimony will be heard. And at some point, there will be a verdict. The financial markets are watching this closely too. Because if Trump gets hit with more massive penalties, if his businesses start collapsing, that could have ripple effects. Properties could be sold off in fire sales. Creditors could start demanding payment. The Trump brand, which licenses its name to buildings and products worldwide, could become toxic. And yeah, some people might say, good, let him lose everything. But here's the reality. When someone as connected as Trump goes down financially, other people get hurt too. Employees lose jobs. Contractors don't get paid. Investors lose money. It's not just Trump who suffers. That's the complicated part of all this. Trump's not operating in a vacuum. His businesses employ thousands of people. His properties generate tax revenue for cities. His brand, as tarnished as it is, still has value in certain markets. So when prosecutors go after him, when they expose ledgers and file charges, they're not just targeting one man. They're potentially disrupting entire economic ecosystems. And that's something courts have to consider. All right, let's break this down into simple pieces. Because I know this is a lot. It's complicated, it's messy, but at its core, this story is about 3 things. Number 1, the ledger itself and what it allegedly proves. Number 2, the legal implications for Trump right now and in the future. And number 3, what this means for American democracy and the rule of law. Let's start with the ledger. What do we actually know? We know prosecutors presented it in court on November 4th. We know it allegedly contains handwritten notes from Allen Weisselberg. We know it references wire transfers over $420,000. And we know it describes payments as being grossed up to cover taxes. That last part, the grossing up, that's key, because that's exactly what happened with the Stormy Daniels hush money payment. Michael Cohen paid her $130,000, but Trump Organization reimbursed Cohen way more, something like $420,000 total to cover taxes and legal fees. They grossed up the payment. So if this ledger shows other payments being grossed up the same way, that suggests a pattern. It suggests this wasn't just about Stormy Daniels. It suggests Trump and his team were routinely making secret payments and hiding them through accounting tricks. The foreign entities part, that's still murky. We don't have details on who got paid or why. But if Trump was paying foreign officials or governments and disguising those payments, that could violate the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. That's a federal crime that carries serious penalties. Trump's defense, as always, is total denial. The ledger is fake, it's manufactured. Prosecutors are lying, it's all political. And look, his supporters believe that. They've been told for years that the media lies, that prosecutors are corrupt, that everyone's out to get Trump. So when evidence like this surfaces, they just dismiss it. But here's the thing. A judge looked at this evidence. A judge with no political stake in the outcome. A judge who's required to be impartial. And that judge said, yeah, this is admissible. This can be used in court. That should tell you something. Now, point number 2. The legal implications. What happens to Trump because of this? Well, in the short term, probably nothing. He's the president. He's got immunity for official acts. And even for personal acts, the DOJ policy is not to indict a sitting president. So Trump can sit in the White House, run the country, make policy decisions, all while this trial continues. He might have to testify. He might have to sit through more court dates, but he's not going to jail tomorrow. However, and this is a big however, once Trump leaves office, all bets are off. The statute of limitations on fraud charges is usually 5 years in New York. Depending on when these alleged crimes happen, prosecutors might have years to file charges. And with evidence like this ledger, they've got ammunition. Trump's already a convicted felon from the hush money case. If he gets convicted in this fraud case, or if federal prosecutors decide to charge him with bribery or FCPA violations, he could be looking at serious prison time. We're talking about a former president potentially dying in prison. And yeah, I know that sounds dramatic, but it's real. Trump's 79 years old. If he gets sentenced to even 10 years at his age, that's basically a life sentence. This isn't hypothetical. This is a real possibility. The civil side is just as bad. Trump's already on the hook for $354 million in this fraud case. If more evidence comes out, if this ledger leads to more findings of fraud, that number could go up. Add in the defamation cases, the sexual abuse judgments. Trump could owe close to $1 billion. His real estate empire, the thing he built his entire brand on, could collapse. Properties could be seized. Assets could be liquidated. The Trump name, which he spent decades turning into a symbol of wealth and success, could become synonymous with fraud and failure. Point number 3, what this means for democracy. Because honestly, this is bigger than Trump. This is about whether America can hold powerful people accountable. This is about whether the rule of law actually means anything. For years, we've watched Trump break norms, violate ethical standards, skirt the law, and face minimal consequences. He lost the 2020 election, refused to concede, incited a riot at the Capitol, and still came back to win in 2024. He's been indicted in 4 separate criminal cases and still became president again. That sends a message. It tells future presidents, hey, you can do whatever you want. As long as you have enough supporters, as long as you can convince people that your enemies are lying, you can get away with anything. And that's dangerous. That's how democracies die. Not with a bang, but with a slow erosion of accountability. With people in power realizing they're above the law. This ledger case, it's a test. Can our legal system actually hold Trump accountable? Can judges and prosecutors do their jobs without being intimidated or influenced by politics? Or will Trump skate by again, protected by his office and his base? I don't know the answer. Nobody does. But what I do know is this. The evidence is piling up. The pattern is clear. Trump and his organization allegedly engaged in systematic fraud for years. They allegedly made illegal payments. They allegedly hid those payments through accounting tricks and false records. And if that's true, if even half of what prosecutors are alleging is true, then Trump deserves to face consequences. Real consequences. Not just fines that he'll appeal for years. Not just convictions that his supporters will ignore, but actual accountability. So where does this go from here? The trial continues. More witnesses will testify. More documents will be presented. And eventually there will be a verdict. If Trump loses, he'll appeal. That process could take years. But the evidence is there. The ledger is there. And unlike testimony, documents don't lie. The 2026 midterms are coming. If Democrats take control of Congress, they might launch new investigations. They might push for impeachment again. They might use this ledger as evidence that Trump is unfit for office. If Republicans hold on, they'll probably protect Trump. They'll call it a witch hunt. They'll dismiss the evidence. And Trump will keep doing what he's always done, surviving through sheer force of will and loyalty from his base. But eventually, this catches up to you. Eventually, the lies collapse. The fraud gets exposed. The ledger comes to light. And when that happens, even the most loyal supporters start to question. Look at the numbers. Trump's approval rating has been hovering around 45% since he took office in January. That means more than half the country disapproves of the job he's doing. And every new scandal, every new revelation, chips away at that support a little more. His hardcore base, maybe 30% of Americans, they'll never abandon him. They're ride or die. But that middle 15%, the people who voted for him because they thought he'd be good for the economy or because they didn't like the alternative, those people can be swayed. And this ledger is exactly the kind of concrete evidence that might sway them. It's not partisan spin. It's not media bias. It's an actual document allegedly showing illegal activity. That's harder to dismiss. The international implications are wild too. If Trump was making payments to foreign entities, other countries are watching this. Our allies are wondering if they can trust a president who's allegedly involved in bribery schemes. Our adversaries are seeing weakness, seeing chaos, and looking for ways to exploit it. This isn't just about American politics anymore. This is about America's standing in the world, about whether we can claim moral authority when our own president is allegedly corrupt. And yeah, you could argue that plenty of other countries have corrupt leaders, that we shouldn't hold ourselves to some impossible standard. But that's a race to the bottom. That's giving up on the idea that America should be better. This is just the beginning. More revelations are coming. More evidence will surface. And Trump's legal problems, they're not going away. They're only getting worse. The question is, how long can he hold on? How long can he keep fighting in court? Keep denying everything? Keep convincing his supporters that everyone else is lying? Because at some point, the weight of all this evidence becomes too much. At some point, even the most loyal defender has to look at a ledger full of suspicious payments and ask, wait, is this actually true? Did he actually do this? And when that moment comes, when the tide finally turns, Trump's entire empire could come crashing down in a matter of weeks. So yeah, buckle up. Because the next few months, maybe the next few years, are going to be absolutely wild. And this ledger, it might just be the smoking gun that finally brings Trump down. Or maybe not. Maybe he survives this too. Maybe he's truly untouchable. But one thing's for sure, we're about to find out. And when we do, it's going to reshape American politics for a generation. Stay tuned, because this story is far from over.